Chapter Seizure Center.
Naturally, I expected to see interplanetary super technology capable of subduing an entire planet. But what appeared before my eyes, I don't think American and other military specialists would ever guess the weapons that could so easily subdue the territories they supposedly defend. Now you, dear readers, before reading further, try to imagine the weaponry of extraterrestrials preparing to seize Earth. Then you will see what it looks like, in fact. Outwardly, it looks like this: a huge square building. On each of the building's 4 sides there are full-size replicas of the interiors of our earthly parliaments, State Duma, and office of our president in the Kremlin. On the opposite side of the hall are the interiors of the American Congress and the president's White House office. On the other 2 sides of the hall are the interiors of the state organs of, apparently, Asian countries. Our earthly deputies, congressmen and presidents sit in the parliamentary chairs. At first I examined the replicas of our Russian deputies. They were an exact copy of those familiar faces I have had occasion to see on television. However, they sat without moving, like mummies. It's hard to say what they were made of. They might have been puppets, holograms, or robots, or maybe something else. In the middle of the huge hall, about 50 extraterrestrials sat in armchairs placed on a dais. They were not wearing their usual coveralls, but our earthly suits, and they were listening to the person speaking before them. The speaker was probably their main instructor, or some other sort of superior. Anastasia explained that I was watching one of their landing parties, now taking another class to prepare them to interact with earthly governments. They studied the most widespread languages on Earth and people's behavior in different situations. They were preparing especially carefully for contact with earthly governments and legislative bodies, through which they hoped to influence the Earth's entire population. Conversational speech came easily to them, but due to their lack of certain feelings capable of calling forth visible emotions, it was hard for them to learn the gestures and facial expressions of earthly people. Furthermore, their logical habits of thought just couldn't grasp the logic in the system of state governance on Earth. Despite bringing in the best minds and most advanced technology of their civilization, they simply could not guess. For example, the following secret: why, despite the computer technology that Earth already had, did the many special scientific institutions not present state legislative bodies with information about the consequences of the decisions they took? These aliens were convinced that given a central analytic center, for which the Earth already had everything it needed, social phenomena could be modeled almost exactly, depending on the sum total of decisions taken. However, each member of an earthly government, each legislator, was supposed to act independently and decide on his own. Without sufficient information, each member of government had to carry out the functions of a powerful analytical center, and in so doing calculate the consequences of the behavior of his colleagues, enemies, and friends. Another very mysterious issue, not solved by the extraterrestrials, was why earthly people did not decide on the goal they had to reach. They strove towards something, but what exactly that was kept a deep, dark secret. Nevertheless, assuming present-day requirements of earthly communities of people, the extraterrestrials were preparing a plan for seizing the Earth's continents. They would start implementing their plan by means of proposals to Earthlings made through the governments of various countries. Their proposals would be accepted with delight. When I asked Anastasia why she was so certain about the decisions of earthly governments, this answer followed.
That is what their analysis center has calculated. The center's conclusion is correct. The present-day level of awareness of most Earthlings will consider what the extraterrestrials propose to be the highest manifestation of the humanity of the cosmic intellect.
And what are these proposals?
They are monstrous, Vladimir. I don't like talking about them.
At least, tell me the main parts. I would like to know what these monstrous proposals are that will be received with such joy on Earth, where, after all, we both live.
The extraterrestrials plan to land a small force first, consisting of 3 flying apparatuses in the territory of Russia. They will inform the military that surrounds them of their desire to meet with governmental circles with regard to cooperation. They will introduce themselves to the military as representatives of the supreme universal intellect and will demonstrate the superiority of their technology to them. After meetings in military, scientific and governmental circles, after about 14 days, they will be asked to make their proposals specific, but first to undergo an examination to establish the safety of contact with them. The space aliens will agree to examination and will present their proposals in written form and on video cassettes. The text will be set out in a form very similar to official documents today and will be distinguished by maximum simplicity. The content of the text will be approximately as follows. We are representatives of an extraterrestrial civilization that has achieved a higher technological development than the other rational inhabitants of the galaxies, and we consider the people of Earth our brothers in intellect. We are prepared to share our knowledge in various areas of science and social development with the earthly communities and to offer our technologies. We ask you to consider our proposals and choose the most acceptable of them for improving the life of every member of society. Then will follow many specific proposals, the essence of which will boil down to the following. The space aliens will offer their technologies to provide all of the country's inhabitants with nutritional mixtures and swift construction of housing for each person who has reached adulthood. The same kind of buildings you have already seen, only with fewer functions. As an example, they would supply the country with their mini-factories. They would combine the extraterrestrial factories with existing earthly ones, but in 5 years all the earthly technologies will have been used and replaced by technically more rational ones. Everyone wanting to work would be given a job. Not only that, absolutely every inhabitant of Earth would have to apply the necessary minimum of working hours to maintain the equipment. The country that reached an agreement with space aliens would be fully protected from military invasion by other countries. The society with the new social structure and technically equipped daily life would have no crime. In your apartment you would be given everything necessary. The apartment would react only to commands issued by your voice with the timbre characteristic of it alone. Daily, before consumption of food, your apartment's computer would determine your physical condition based on your eyeball and the composition of the air you breathe and other parameters and prescribe the appropriate composition of your nutritive mixture. Each computer installed in an individual apartment would be linked to the main one. In this way, the location of each person would be known, as would his physical and psychological condition. Any crime could be easily solved using a special program on the main computer, and there would be no social base for breeding crime. In exchange, the aliens intended to ask the government for the opportunity to settle representatives of their civilization in lightly populated regions, forest mainly, the right to exchange individual gardens for the new highly advanced apartments, and lifelong security for everyone wishing to exchange their piece of land. The government would agree since they would retain full power. Or so they would think. Several religions would start to preach that the space aliens were God's emissaries, since they did not reject a single one of the religions that existed on Earth. Religious leaders who did not believe in the space aliens' divine perfection would not be able to counter them, due to their acceptance by most of the country that had reached the agreement. Other countries would want to try to cooperate with the aliens. 9 years after their appearance on Earth on all continents and in all countries, the new way of life would quickly take root, and more new developments in technology and social structure would be propagandized through all the information channels. The majority of the population would praise the representatives of the cosmic intellect as their more perfect brothers in intellect, like gods.
With good reason. There is nothing bad in there not being wars or crime on Earth, an apartment, food, and work for each person.
Vladimir, have you really not understood that by accepting the extraterrestrials' conditions, humanity would be giving up its own non-material divine self? It would be killing itself. All that would remain would be material bodies. Each person would come to resemble a biorobot more and more, Vladimir. All earthly children would be born biorobots.
But why?
All people would be compelled to serve daily the mechanisms that outwardly serve them. All humanity would fall into the trap and give up their freedom and their children for the perfection of artificial technology. Intuitively, many Earthlings would immediately sense their mistake and then they would start committing suicide.
Strange. What would they be lacking?
Freedom, creativity, and the sensations that only creation aided by the divine can offer.
And what if the parliaments and governments of Earth don't accede to agreements with the extraterrestrials? What will happen then? Will they start destroying humanity?
Then the extraterrestrial minds will start searching for other paths to lure everybody into their trap. It makes no sense for them to destroy humanity. After all, their goal is to know the interconnection among all earthly creations, and by what power their reproduction is created. Nothing of the kind can be done without man. Man himself is the chief link in the chain of the harmony of earthly creation. Even the sun's rays are a part of the energies and feelings that many people reproduce. Given today's consciousness, the aliens are not afraid of the people of Earth, and even now many Earthlings are trying to help them.
How can that be? Who among us helps them? Does this mean there are traitors among people? They're working for them.
Yes, they are. But those people are not traitors. Their complicity is acquired without their will, not maliciously, not intentionally. The main reason is their lack of faith in themselves and in the perfection of God's creations.
What kind of interconnection is here?
A simple one. When a person allows the thought that he is not a perfect creation, when he suddenly begins to imagine that beings on other planets have a more powerful intellect, he himself feeds them with his thought. Man himself dims his divine power and does not direct power to the divine creations. They have learned to collect the energy produced by human thoughts and feelings into a single complex, and they are proud of this. Look, there is a vessel before the group of extraterrestrials, and in it a liquid is glowing, first turning into a gas, then solidifying. They have no stronger weapon than what is contained in that small vessel. Later, they will divide all of its contents into many small flat vessels. One of its walls will be a special reflector. They will hang a device like this on their chest. All those sitting in front of you already have them. When this kind of device directs its ray at a human being, it can give rise in the human being to fear, worship, or admiration. It can paralyze the human will, consciousness, and body. The thoughts of many people are contained in that ray. People's thoughts that there is someone more powerful than man in the universe, than man, God's creation, and their thoughts can be used to counter those very same people.
So we ourselves add to their power when we extol them as more intelligent than ourselves?
Yes, that's right. More intelligent than ourselves, which means more intelligent than God.
What does God have to do with this?
We are all His creations. When we believe that there are worlds more perfect in the galaxies, we are implying that we are imperfect, that God's creations are imperfect.
That's just great. Has a lot of this kind of energy accumulated in the extraterrestrial world?
There is enough in the vessel before you to subdue approximately 3/4 of all earthly minds and to master human feelings. They believe that this is enough and then some. Then worship of the civilization the aliens created on Earth will begin, and the aliens' might will increase.
Does this mean that nothing can be done?
It can, if a risk is taken, that they are not expecting. After all, the full set of human feelings, even that of one person, is always more powerful. Thought can be accelerated to increase rates in those who do not possess feelings, and all the energy gathered in the vessel can be neutralized by the energy of another thought that is brighter, more confident, and more perfect.
And you, Anastasia, could you neutralize all the energy contained in the vessel?
I could try, but I would need to gather my whole body here for that.
What for?
My set of feelings will be incomplete without my body. Matter is one of the planes of human existence. With it, man is more powerful than the universal essences.
So gather it to break the vessel.
I'm going to try to do something now without breaking it.
And all of a sudden, I saw Anastasia before me in the flesh. Everything on her was as it had been in the forest, the blouse, the skirt. Her bare feet were standing on the floor, and suddenly she started walking unhurriedly towards those sitting before the vessel with the glowing liquid. They saw her. The unfeeling extraterrestrials' faces did not express any emotions, but they only sat without stirring for one instant. A second later, everyone had stirred. All of a sudden, as if on someone's command, they stood up, and each picked up the medallion hanging on his chest. All the medallions burst out in rays. All the rays were aimed towards Anastasia, walking toward them. She stopped, swayed, and suddenly took a small step back, stopped again, smiled, tapped her barefoot, and slowly, confidently started forward again. The rays, coming from the extraterrestrials' medallions, became brighter and brighter, merging into one aimed at Anastasia. It seemed that they would incinerate all her clothing in an instant. But Anastasia kept walking forward. She suddenly held her hands out in front and extinguished several rays, deflecting them with her palms, and then the rest began to go out. The extraterrestrials stood as before, without stirring. Anastasia walked up to the vessel, placed her palms on its sides, stroked the vessel, and whispered something to it. The liquid in the vessel suddenly started to seethe. Then its light began to go out little by little, and soon after, the liquid in the vessel had become slightly blue, like ordinary water on Earth. Anastasia walked up to the machine by the wall that looked like an earthly refrigerator. She placed her palm on it, whispered something, and the machine spat colored square tablets out into the lifted hem of her blouse. Anastasia walked up to the extraterrestrials, who were still standing there mute, and held out a tablet from the machine to the one on the end. The extraterrestrial stirred and was about to reach for it, but immediately fell still, then began to stare at the person standing in front of them all, probably their leader. Anastasia stood like that in front of him, with her hand held out for about half a minute. Then she walked right up to the leader and held out a tablet to him. After a pause, the leader took the tablet and put it in his mouth. Anastasia went around to everyone present, and each now calmly took the tablets and chewed or swallowed them. Then she walked away from them toward me, stopped halfway, turned toward the group of sitting extraterrestrials and waved to them. A few extraterrestrials rose from their seats and waved to her in reply. When she came even with me, Anastasia said in a weary voice,
"We need to return. They have now taken tablets that accelerate thought. Let them try to make sense of what has happened here."
And it was all over. I lay on the forest grass as before, as if I had awakened from a deep sleep. It seemed as if very little time had passed, but my body felt rested, like after a deep, healthy sleep. But my head, everything seemed to be seething inside, as if my thoughts were flowing in different directions at once. The pictures I had seen on the other planet, everything remained wholly inside me. What was that? A dream? Hypnosis? Or all that put together? I couldn't understand. It was impossible to believe in the reality of seeing a planet other than Earth, and I asked Anastasia sitting next to me, what was that? A dream? Hypnosis? I remembered everything, and now there was a kind of chaos in my mind.
Vladimir, decide for yourself as you like, by what power the vision of the other planet appeared before you. Since the question makes you uneasy, agree to say you were dreaming. All that doesn't matter. What does matter is the essence, the conclusions and feelings from the vision. Think about them, and I will go away for a little while.
Yes, go away, and I will think about it myself. I began thinking about what I had seen when I was left alone. Of course, I decided I had dreamed some kind of hypnotic dream. After taking a few steps, Anastasia suddenly turned around, walked up to me again, and took something out of her blouse pocket and held her open palm out to me. In her palm laid the strange tablet I had seen on the other planet.
Take it, Vladimir. You can swallow it without fear. They make it from earthly herbs on the planet where we were. It will help accelerate your thinking for about 15 minutes, so you can make sense of what you've experienced more quickly.
I took the small tablet from her outstretched palm, and when Anastasia left, I ate it.
End of chapter. Join us for the next segment of Co-Creation, Book 4 of the Ringing Cedar series. Bring back your homeland, people.